Hey everyone, it's Purple Haze here with a new segment that I'm calling Purple Shade. Shout out to Main Games for the idea, as well as Dark 1985 for the motivation. And yes, I am still going to be doing Shades of Purple at Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, where I interview content creators, and my game playthroughs on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is really just me trying to get my voice out there a little bit more and adding some spice to the conversation. All right, with that said, let's talk about this deal and why I think what I think. All right, so what do we know about this deal? Probably the biggest thing is we know that Microsoft is throwing out, let's call it $70 billion to buy Activision Blizzard. But before we really get into anything really pertinent to the actual deal in the agreement, I want to talk a little bit more about the environment that set this whole thing in motion. First, I want to talk about the summer of 2021. This was when California filed a lawsuit against Activision Blizzard for workplace harassment claims or the lack of action of workplace harassment claims. I also want to remember Call of Duty Vanguard and the debacle that launch was in the fall of 2021. Lastly, I want to talk about Overwatch 2 being delayed as well as Diablo 4 being delayed. Now, why are these things important? Well, they're important because now not only do you have employees pissed off with the leadership of Activision Blizzard, but you also have shareholders and stock analysts pissed off with Activision Blizzard's leadership. And who in particular in Activision Blizzard's leadership? One Bobby Kotick. So if you're Bobby Kotick and you want to stay in power because he basically said he wanted to stay in power during this whole time and he wasn't willing to step down, how do you get out of this? Well, we'll be coming back to that in a second. But now let's flash forward to today. And particularly, I want to talk about the agreement that was signed between Activision Blizzard and Microsoft. No, not the $70 billion, even though it can be argued for both sides that that's no longer a valid number. What I want to talk about is the time limit or the timeline that this deal had to get through, which was 18 months. Okay. So that meant 18 months after the deal was announced, the deal had to get through. Now, that doesn't mean the deal can't be renegotiated after 18 months. It just means the initial deal is no longer valid at 18 months. That also means that both parties or either party can just walk away from the deal with not having to pay a penalty and not having to worry about being sued, even though they most likely would be sued. It probably wouldn't hold up in court. Now, what we do know is that several regulatory bodies that have to give their approval for this deal to go through have already hinted that they're going to probably go to court after the 18-month timeline. Convenient? Maybe so. But let's talk about this renegotiation. No, I don't want to talk about the $70 billion just because I think Microsoft absolutely doubles down and offers the same amount, even though they could probably make a great argument that they no longer need to offer that amount. What I want to talk about is Activision Blizzard. Why do they go along with this deal? And before you say again, Purple, they'll get sued, once again, the agreement's no longer in effect. And before you say, well, shareholders have already bought in, need I remind you that this entire deal was basically single-handedly negotiated by Bobby Kotick to begin with. So with that, let's think about the environment in 2023 and see how it measures up with the environment in 2021. Well, first off, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which launched in fall of 2022, greatly surpassing the expectations before it, so much so that people forget of the debacle that was the launch of Call of Duty Vanguard. On top of that, Overwatch 2 was released in the fall of 2022, and that too exceeded its somewhat mediocre expectations to begin with. Lastly, Diablo 4 is scheduled to launch in the summer of 2023. Not only that, Diablo 4 is scheduled to be one of the biggest PC launches of 2023. But most importantly, no one's talking about workforce harassment claims, the thing that started this whole conversation with Bobby Kotick. You want to know why they're not talking about it? Sure, part of the reason is because it's no longer a news cycle. Part of the reason is also Activision Blizzard actually fired some of the biggest offenders during of these workforce harassment claims. But probably the biggest thing no one's talking about it is because we're going through a recession. And what happens in recessions? People just get laid off for no reason other than the company needs to get cut costs. So if you're an employee in that situation, you want to know what you're not doing? Calling out your CEO for workforce harassment claims. I didn't make the rules, it's just how it plays out. So who does this all benefit? Bobby Kotick. And so if Bobby Kotick no longer has the pressures in place that started this whole deal, why does he go and voluntarily step down now? And before you talk about, well, he's going to get $400 million, let me tell you, he already has $400 million. And the one thing we know about rich dudes in power, they want to stay in power. They don't care who they have to throw under the bus or who they have to play. In this case, it seems like Microsoft and fans of Game Pass have been the ones getting played. Now, this deal could still go through and whatnot. All I'm saying is, I wouldn't be surprised in the summer of 2023 if we start hearing some excuses coming from the Activision Blizzard side about why they don't want to get through with this deal. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. And as always, comment, like, subscribe, and if you want to see more of this content, let me know. I don't know if I'm going to be putting out any other particular schedule, but I do plan on doing more of this. Seemed pretty fun. As always, I don't care where you game, how you game, why you game, when you game. As long as you're gaming, you're good with me. And this is Purple Haze. The proof is in the plane. Just don't get played while proving. All right, later, y'all.